Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the plain. In Genesis 19, we read how these cities were destroyed by God with brimstone and fire from heaven, the first biblical record of God's vengeance upon evil since the Great Flood. My husband, biblical archaeologist Ron Wyatt, never planned to search for these cities, but in 1989, while working on another project, he was suddenly impressed to stop and examine some odd-shaped, whitish-colored formations along the western shore of the Dead Sea. After driving past these at least 30 or 40 times in the past 12 years, this time they suddenly looked like the shapes of city walls and buildings. Pulling over, he and his crew closely examined these desolate areas. Taking samples of the material, they discovered that they broke right off in their hand and disintegrated into dust the consistency of talcum powder, as Greg Brewer shows us here. In August of 1990, Ron returned to these sites to thoroughly explore them, 5 sites which he had thus far located. I accompanied him this trip along with Marv and Renetta Wilson of Garland, Texas. As we approached the first site we examined, we all could easily see the shapes Ron had described. As no roads led into these areas, we pulled our car off the road and began the long, difficult hike. There was no doubt that these areas were unique to the immediate surrounding area. It was very difficult to walk there, for the loose material made walking an arduous chore. Following what clearly looked like the shape of an outer wall, we soon met with a most breathtaking sight. The wall had ended, and we were now looking down into what appeared to be the entrance into the city. But before we entered, our interest was captivated by a most unusual find. About 100 yards from the entrance, upon a high level, was a singular shape. As we viewed it from all angles, we all agreed it plainly bore the shape of a sphinx. We later found more of these sphinx shapes, which we'll see later in the film. As we entered the open section, we soon found ourselves walking along very distinctive paths which communicated with one another just as our streets today. As we approached what appeared to be a dead end, we found it turned to the right and continued along until it met another street. There was distinct order here. These were clearly once streets, and along these streets were the shapes of buildings. Even to our untrained eye, the evidence was undeniable. The ziggurat shape near the entrance was almost perfectly preserved. Our research had yielded the fascinating fact that substances burned with sulfur or brimstone had a remaining ash that was heavier than the initial unburned substance. That explained our question as to why the ash of these cities had been able to remain all these 3,900 years. The layering present in all the formations was another positive evidence that whatever these once were, they had been burned at temperatures exceeding 4,000 or 5,000 degrees. This layering effect was the result of thermal ionization. Whenever a substance is burned at extremely high temperatures, the ions of the various substances being burned attract and repel, distorting the flame. Ron drew our attention to features present here which simply do not occur naturally. He showed us a section which revealed a broken double wall which extended toward us at a perfect 90-degree angle. The site we were examining was located at the base of Masada. And soon we all decided that we should go to the top of Masada and film these areas from there. As we took the cable car to the top, the view was breathtaking. The shape of the city was perfectly revealed below us. Here we saw a giant platform-like area, perfectly symmetrical, which was identical to the temple areas of other ancient cities, such as the biblical Shushan or Susa, located in present-day Iran. Then we saw the raised section which we had climbed upon earlier, with the Sphinx shape and the ziggurat. We were all convinced, but we also knew there had to be more evidence than this to convince others.